Well, welcome Andrew Peterson to our blog, and we're excited about having you. You're in England, so we're kind of going over the waters, and it's great to have you. Great to see you.
Thank you.
So my deal was I struggled with COVID. I mean, I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like I was uh, uh, confined to space. And so I just found myself getting kind of frustrated. And then I read your book. COVID was the landscape for you to write this book. How did that happen? And can you correct me? Because I didn't feel the same way.
Okay, so I totally hear you. I remember there being a moment probably halfway through last year where I read an article and it said, "Do you feel like you can't concentrate on anything for more than 10 seconds?"
Yeah.
Uh, and I was like, "Yes, that's exactly me." So evidently there was a real thing, like a diagnosable thing that many people were experiencing, where I think the anxiety and the strangeness, the disruption, had occupied the part of our brains that would have been, I don't know, the creative part. Maybe that's an explanation for it. I don't know, but you are not alone. You are not crazy. I think maybe the difference is I had a deadline.
Oh, that's well. So I'm giving you all this credit that the spirit was working in you, and all along it was a deadline. So,
Yeah,
well,
I seldom feel like that. It's usually a deadline. Yeah.
well, you've written a book called "The God of the Garden," and it's we got the first couple chapters, got to review them. Sounds great. Tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it, and what you expect to see the Lord use this book for.
Yeah. So I'll say that I'm figuring out how to talk about this because it's a new. I'm just now beginning to try to find words to explain where the book came from. So forgive me if I meander a little bit. It started with me realizing after about 3 weeks into lockdown, into COVID, that I had spent more consecutive nights in my bed than I had in 2 decades. Because I'm a touring musician, in addition to being a writer, like travel is just kind of par for the course, gone a lot. And COVID gave me permission to be still for a whole year. And I don't think I realized how desperate I was to be still until it hit me. And I probably wouldn't have been still if I hadn't been forced into it. And so we live in the countryside, just outside of Nashville, and have fallen in love with. I have fallen in love with the kind of the idea. How do I put this? I resonate strongly with the idea that one of the things that God made humans to do is to care for the world that God made and loves. And
Mhm.
so, I, for whatever reason, we've been entrusted these few acres in Nashville, and I'm trying to figure out what it looks like for, uh, you know, a son of Adam and a daughter of Eve, children of the King, to live out their days on a couple of acres in a way that is kingdom minded. And so that
Really.
what that looks like is growing things and paying attention to the beauty of the way God made the world, and praising Him for it, but also sharing it with other people. And so I think part of the idea of the book came from this medieval. I think it was probably an ancient Christian idea that there are two books of Revelation. The ancient Christians used to say there are two books of Revelation. There's Scripture and there's nature. And so
Mm.
what that means is if you want to know God, what He's like, then read your Bible and also pay attention to His creation, and it's declaring His praise all day long. And so I think this book grew out of that, and in the process became a kind of memoir about the way God has made His presence known to me through His creation.
Mm. That's great. That's well put. You didn't meander at all. It was right on, right
Hey,
on.
that's good.
Can I go back to what you were feeling in your soul in your busy time, the time when you hadn't slept in your own bed for consecutive nights? You went back to that part, your soul, a deep that part of you that no one knows but you, and contrast what your soul is like now after a year of being forced still and what it was like then. What was your soul like then?
Well, I mean, I think we all felt harried, like uh I think that if I'm honest with myself, when I look back at the last 25 years or so of touring, there have been times when people have been mistakenly impressed with me because I've had a lot of output, written a few books and put out several records, that kind of thing. And there's a little part of me that, like, kind of like, the first time somebody said that they were like, wow, how do you do this? How do you whatever? I felt kind of cool. And then almost immediately the Holy Spirit just convicted me, and I realized uh, that there was nothing. How do I put it? That a lot of the reason that I have been running as hard as I've been running for the last 20 some odd years is a combination of fear and ambition.
Really? Talk to
Um,
me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up really poor, and I chose for a career one where I was self-employed and have a family. And so, in the beginning, when you're 25 or 30 and you're touring, it's like, well, if you stop moving, this ship sinks. So you end up getting into this habit of thinking it's up to me to keep the thing going.
Mm, yeah.
So that's a lot of it. When the truth is, I've only ever had one provider. And if I'm really honest with myself, I know that I have said yes to shows not because the Spirit was leading me to say yes to the shows, but I've said yes to certain things because I was afraid of not doing it,
Really?
or either financially, or it's the other side of the coin is this really broken desire to, like, leave a mark. Like, oh, I've got to do this thing because this is, younger men feel this need to leave a legacy. I don't feel the need to leave a legacy. One of my favorite quotes is from Rich Mullins. He said, "If your ambition is to leave a legacy, you'll leave a legacy of ambition." And so I'm far more interested in leading a peaceful and a quiet life, like Paul said, uh, than to try to leave a mark or to frantically, acquire, you know, fill, build bigger barns. And so that said, we're trying to do the best we can to steward what we've been given, but with a kingdom mindset. I think that's the big
Mhm.
difference. I have a friend who last thing I'll say about that is that, this is kind of a funny story, but I felt conflicted about how much I loved 2020 because a lot of people suffered. There were a lot of deaths. There was a
Yeah.
lot of fear, a lot of awful things happen in the world, and in our little corner of the world, for whatever reason, we felt a lot of that stuff, but we also experienced very little of it. And so I felt kind of guilty about the fact that I was resting as much as I was resting, and flourishing, because we were on our property taking care of the garden and watching our kids get married, and that kind of thing. And so I was talking to another buddy of mine who I hadn't seen in a long time, who's a musician. And I was like, dude, how was COVID year for you? And he goes, best year of my life. And I was like, that's funny because I feel that, but I also feel kind of guilty feeling that. And he goes, I don't feel guilty. And I said, why not? And he goes, I'm a musician. I've suffered for 2 decades. So I was like, I thought that was a good answer. I was kind of like, okay, maybe I should be
Yeah.
thankful, and not try to jump through a bunch of hoops, and but just give thanks for the fact that we had a good year and that we've rested, and then hold on to what we learned, like you've been asking about. What have I learned about being still and slowing down and having the courage to say no to certain things, even though they may pay well,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there are more important things.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Hey, can I turn a corner on this interview and talk a little bit about you're a creative. You ooze creativity, whether it's music or writing, and how you put those together. And um, we have a person in our office, a young woman who's so creative, and she often asks, where's the place for creatives in today's culture, particularly Christian culture? Where do we fit? Because it doesn't seem like that is important as it used to be. What would you say to that?
Um, well, I would let me trying to think how to answer this question. I would encourage her to read my last book, Adorning the Dark. Um, that's a really
Wait,
great
you can't push your own
book.
book, buddy. Come
I
on.
know it's pretty lame. But I did write a lot about that question in the book. One of the things that I think is crucial to understand is that there is no such thing as a creative. Every human being is creative fundamentally. I think that's one of the ways we live out the image of God in us. And so it's important for people who are artsy to remember that they are no more or less creative than people who are good at math or or our parents, whatever. Like my wife is not an artist, quote unquote, but she's the mother of my three kids and has made our lives immeasurably beautiful because of her presence in them. And that makes her as creative as anyone. So I think that sometimes an artist can feel, uh, somebody who makes their living in the creative field or in the arts, I should say, um, can feel isolated, maybe alone. And one thing to remember is that you're not alone because everybody around you is, in some measure, probably experiencing a little bit of that same frustration. I think we're all trying to figure out how we live out the image of God in a kingdom way. And so we're all experiencing varying degrees of frustration because of the curse, because of the fall,
Mm.
right? And so sometimes I think that it's easy for artists to feel like kind of tortured and like they're utterly isolated. So that's one part of the answer. The other answer is I know how it feels to feel like you have been given gifts that you can't find where to put them, right? You can't
Mm.
find a good way to use them. That's part of the reason we started the Rabbit Room, the ministry that we started, was because I feel this real um, kinship with and compassion, empathy for the artist that feels alone. Because I was a kid who grew up thinking, well, I probably won't do any kind of ministry because I like comic books and fantasy novels and rock and roll, and I like to draw dragons, and I can't really see how that fits in with ministry. And now I'm 47 years old and I write fantasy novels and I get to play music for a living and am in the ministry, right? And like I feel like all of those things have found their best expression in the context of the kingdom. And so for the church to learn that what I most want young artists to know is that there is a seat for them at the table, that there is a way for them to steward their gifting, no matter what it is, for the glory of God. And so sometimes that's an overt artistry, that's like overtly proclaiming the deeds of the Lord. That's what I feel like I'm called to with my music, not the books, but the music. But to do what the psalmist says, I want to make known the deeds of the Lord among the nations. Other people are called to a subtler, quieter kind of art, but it is all going into this lovely forest that the Lord has planted in His people. So there's this great thing that somebody pointed out in Genesis when God makes trees. I learned this when I was uh, working on the God of the Garden. That it's fascinating to me that He says He made some trees uh, to be beautiful and some to be good for fruit. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but
No, I
uh,
haven't.
like it actually delineates some trees are beautiful and some are good for fruit, or some are pleasing to the eye. And I love that because some art is just there to be pleasing to the eye. It's just there to be beautiful, and other art is there to have fruit on it that you can pluck and eat. And I think of that as kind of like a difference between art that is like what I try to make, which is, I want people to know something, right? I want there to be fruit that they can pluck. But I also know people who are just amazing craftsmen and women, people who just make things, and the world is a better place because it's beautiful. And so that's what I would say to your artist friend. Just be encouraged. You're not alone, and also there's a seat at the table.
That's great. Let me talk to you a little bit about the American church for a minute and its interface with arts and the particularly visual arts. The larger churches I go to and experience, oftentimes they're windowless, dark buildings with lights that go on to the stage, and you worship in the dark. I had a friend attend one of those churches. We were together. We went to church, and he's an older gentleman, and we got all through. I said, "Hey, well, what'd you think?" He goes, "Seems to me they had the lighting wrong. The light should be on the people, and the dark should be on the platform because it's God's people working." What? And I've also kind of read that you have migrated to a more liturgical church setting.
Yeah.
My kids have also done that. So the question is, could you speak into the form and pattern that the church is taking, particularly the American church, and how arts, particularly visual arts, fit into that pattern?
Wow. Well, I will tell you that I hmm. So I'm in England right now, like I said, and have been walking around. Every time we pass one of those little old churches, that's. I mean, we just today went on a footpath, and in the middle of nowhere, like no electricity, no running water, the ruins of a medieval village. There was this church building sitting there, and it was built in the 1300s. Amazing, and it was incredibly beautiful, and it's also empty and dead.
Hmm.
And so it's easy for me to, beauty matters, and I think it's not just the modern American church. It's also kind of like just modern American culture that we build things quickly to maximize profits. That's kind of how we do things in the States. And so, and I think that the fact that churches tend to be that way, new churches tend to be that way. It's just kind of a byproduct of American culture in general, I would guess. And so, yeah, I think there's a great book called Desiring the Kingdom by James K. Smith, where he talks about how human beings are fundamentally desiring creatures. Like, that used to be people thought that what you believed was, or the fact that we are rational makes us human. I think, therefore I am. And then that moved to, no, it's actually what you believe that makes us human, shapes our lives, which is worldview kind of conversation. And then then James K. Smith kind of makes this argument that, like, no, there's something deeper than what you think and what you believe. What really shapes the direction of our lives is what we desire.
Really?
And he argues that, like, we were made for desiring the right things in the right way, which ultimately is God and his kingdom. And then that desire was broken, and now we're always looking for love in the wrong places, right? And so one of the great things about the liturgy, I think, and I would argue that broadly, the liturgy of just showing up at church on Sunday, um, marking the week with gathering with other believers, is that it is a chance to reset our the compass of our desires. And I think that that comes into its sharpest focus at the communion table. I
Hmm.
really believe that at communion, when you kneel and you receive the bread and the wine, and you are reminded this is Christ's body broken for you, that there is this intense beauty and this intense closeness and embodiedness of the experience, that, to me at least, that if my compass has been swinging wildly about what I'm made for, in that moment, it's not swinging. It's brought back to true north. And I remember I was made for Christ, right? I was made for him, and he is the satisfaction of all my desires. And so every week, our compasses get knocked around, and we need church to reset the compass. And beauty is one of the things that does it, right? I think that's James K. Smith's thing. So to me, like, walking into a really beautiful church that is also alive with the Holy Spirit, and it's actually a believing church, why would you not want to be a part of that? But I'd also
Exactly.
rather be in a church that was alive and hideous than a church that was beautiful and empty.
Good word. That's a good word. Well, we spent a half hour or so with Andrew Peterson, a musician, writer, author, and his brand new book, The God of the Garden. And we're excited to be able to put this on our blog. And it's just been a great half hour together, Andrew. And you just ooze right. You just ooze creativity. it's fun to spend some time with you. So
Well, it's good to
blessings.
talk to you too. Thank you very much.
All right. Blessings on you. Bye-bye.